everyone, I'm Joan, and I'll be sharing with you more about the introduced brown anole population in Singapore. In Singapore, so here are the common ones that we have. So firstly, we have the chainable lizard, which, as the name suggests, can exhibit changes in coloration as seen in the adult male. This reddish color is the green coloration that is exhibited during the mating season. And juveniles are differentiated from adults by presence of mid-dorsal stripes along its back. Then we have the green-crested lizard, which is native to Singapore, and it has a black venom, which is the equivalent behavior in the lizard, and it is postulated that the population of this lizard has been facing a decline because of competition from the juvenile lizard. And another interesting species of lizard is the flying dragons. So these lizards have a triangular dewlap, as you see over here, and they also have a pelagium, which is a wing-like extension that allows them to glide from one tree to another. So now we have a new addition to the lizard species in Singapore. So the brown anole is introduced to Singapore and is native to Cuba and the Bahamas. It is established in more than 10 countries globally and has been found to be invasive in several localities of its introduced range. So the brown anole was first documented in Singapore back in 2012 in Gardens by the Bay. So my project is the culmination of a year-long partnership between GB and NUS in efforts to better understand the anole population within Singapore. So how do you identify a brown anole? So anoles exhibit sexual dimorphism in that the adults are larger than the adult females and the adult males are larger than adult females and juveniles. And as you can see over here, the adult female, they exhibit a white dorsal stripe, a single white dorsal stripe down its back. And in some of the females, they also exhibit a zigzag pattern on both sides of the white dorsal stripe. And adult males, they have orange-red dewlap that is used in territorial displays among males as well as for mating displays. So here's a brief overview on what I'll be touching on for the presentation. So we attempted to determine the geographic origin of the brown anole, so whether was it introduced from its native range, so meaning Cuba or the Bahamas, or was it secondarily introduced from its non-native range. And we attempted to determine the distribution of the lizard in Singapore, as well as obtain a set of population estimates of the species. We also tested if there was the presence of habitat selection within anoles in Singapore. So the test for geographic origin, we sequenced 20 kilobaits collected by hand, and the gene that was sequenced was mitochondrial NADH2 that was around 1,200 base pairs long that gave population level information, and these 20 sequences were compared with 334 genetic sequences that were sampled from native and introduced population throughout the world. The result was that all individuals of the Singapore population matched with anoles from the Florida population. And also, if we see the values of genetic diversity, we see that the Singapore population is genetically more diverse than the Cuba population in its native range, and that the value is also quite similar to the Florida population, further corroborating the result that we got earlier from the sequences that the anole was introduced from Florida. So it is very likely that the anole was secondarily introduced from its non-native range in Florida. So to determine the local distribution of the brown anoles, because in the paper that first documented the presence of the lizard in Singapore, it was speculated that the lizard was introduced via the nursery trade. And as such, we visited several nurseries in Singapore to determine if the lizard was present in these nurseries as well. And I did visual encounter surveys within and outside of Gardens by the Bay. So within Gardens by the Bay, as well as the peripheral areas like Marina Bay Golf Course, the East Coast Park Connector Network, as well as the Singapore Flyer. And with these GPS coordinates, I then formed a minimum convex polygon. So the dots just represent the nurseries that I visited, and this picture just shows you how Gardens by the Bay is like. So the lizard was first documented over here at GB South, and it was not present back in 2012 over at GBE East. So the main findings from my distribution study was that the Anole, there is a satellite population present at GBE East, which is here, and that Anoles are also present outside of Gardens by the Bay, as indicated here. To determine population estimates, I used visual encounter surveys, and my projects were 5 by 5 meters, and I timed myself. It was a timed survey of 10 minutes, and used stratified random sampling where projects were categorized by dominant land cover, meaning dominantly concrete, dominantly grass, dominantly herbaceous, and dominantly shrubs. So the estimate that we got was that GBE South had around 16,000 individuals, and that GBE East had around 300 individuals. So if you look at the population densities, it appears that the Singapore population is lower, has a lower population density as compared to its introduced range in Taiwan and Florida. So one possible reason could be that because we used visual encounter surveys to cite Anoles, and that visual encounter surveys are not as effective across different kinds of vegetation. So vegetation, as in habitats that are more open to a more effectively surveyed as compared to areas with denser vegetation. So we tested for the presence of any habitat selection within Anoles in Singapore, and collected environmental parameters like relative humidity, percentage of concrete, grass, shrub, herbaceous, and trees within a project. And we used a generalized linear model to see if there was any form of habitat selection between Anoles in Singapore. So we found that there was significant relationship between anole abundance and percentage of herbaceous cover and trees, meaning that as percentage of herbaceous cover or trees in the project were increases, it was more likely to have higher number of Anoles. So the Joan results are supported by literature. So we have bromeliads that are prevalent in Gardens by the Bay. So some species of bromeliads are actually herbaceous, and throughout the course of my study, we detected the presence of Anoles within these bromeliads. And literature recommends the possible association between Anoles and bromeliads, in the sense that these bromeliads form phytotowns, which are usually the only source of water available above ground, and they are home to many invertebrates like beetles and spiders, which are used for the Anoles as well. And these bromeliads are ideal for concealment when you are not foraging for food. And another thing is that male Anoles are known to use trees as perches, because these elevated perches allow lizards to act as better vantage points for the lizards, and allow them to better exhibit their territoriality, as well as make them more prevalent to potential mates. Actually, Gardens by the Bay is taking a very active role in managing the brown anole population within gardens. So what they have done is that they are manually catching lizards by hand, as well as using Y-shaped pitfall traps over the past few months. So these recommendations that I have are just measures that could be used to supplement what we are doing currently. Since we have detected the presence of satellite population at GBE East, it is suggested that control of this satellite population is done soon, because spread of a non-native species occurs faster if there is more than one population. And also because the ornamental plant trade is postulated to be the mode of introduction of brown Anoles in Singapore, that it is highly recommended that research be done to develop methods that can treat high volumes of ornamental plants, because you want to prevent further introductions of brown Anoles or other non-native species as well. And population estimates that we derive from the study could be used for continued long-term monitoring of the population in Gardens by the Bay. And because there is currently no effective mode of extermination for specific, it is highly suggested that species-specific tools are developed for control, for extermination of brown Anoles. So here's just a summary of the results, and determined that the geographic origin of the brown anole is likely to be secondarily introduced from Florida. And the distribution survey showed that the species is present outside of Gardens by the Bay, and that there's a right population over at GB East. So population estimates show that over at GB South there is around 60,000 individuals, and GB East around 300 individuals. And GLM results showed that habitat selection exists in brown anole populations in Singapore. Here are the acknowledgements. I would like to thank Kira, and Dr. Adrian Wu for kind assistance for our study. I would like to thank any parts for the permits, and I would like to thank Dr. Jay and Prof. Maya for assistance during molecular sequencing. And that's all.